This is task 2D. You're being asked to complete a test plan to show how 3 different formulae in the spreadsheet could be tested. So it's worth noting straight away that because it's asked for formulae, we're not testing validation, we're not testing conditional formatting, we're not testing buttons, and we're not testing worksheet protection. It's purely about formulae and functions. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. Let's copy the table which we've got here. So this is the table we're now going to fill in. Now because we're copying, so we're testing formulae and functions, all of our tests are going to be valid. We're not doing any invalid tests to create validation errors. So all our tests will be valid, and we'll have test numbers 1, 2 and 3. Now as we go through this, we need to be very specific in what we say. When we look at input data values, we're going to be very specific about the data that is going to be input. We are giving clear instructions to a tester as to exactly how to go about testing this spreadsheet. And expected output values as well, we're also going to be looking for very specific responses that are expected. And a description is just a general idea of what is being tested. Now if we have a look at things that can be tested, we've got the APR calculator, and we've also got the APR, so the owner model. And if we have a look at certain formulas and functions, we can have a look at, for example, the ownership year. Now I need to unprotect my sheet so that we can have a look at what we're expecting that to be. That is based on quite a lot of things, because it's based on the start date of the year plus matching all sorts of stuff. Whereas if we went for this formula, we are just checking that it matches whatever the year is of the start date. So we're going to have a look at that. So what is our description going to be? It's going to be the actual year for year 1, okay, on the ownership model worksheet. Now it's absolutely critical that you identify what worksheet is being used, because the moderators will knock this down if you don't, because there are more than one worksheet involved. So let's have a look at what is our input data for this. Our input data is the start date. Okay, so I'm going to say start date on, and we need to say the ownership model worksheet equals, well let's go for the date that's on there, 07/08/2014. What would our expected output value be? Well, if we did a year based in 2014 like this, if that's 12, we would expect this to be 2012. Now you can't 12. Although it seems fairly obvious because you've actually said that it's the actual year for year 1 on ownership model, they will want this to be a little bit more specific. So we need to say actual year on ownership model equals 2012. Now let's have a look at something else. We could have a look at things like interest, but again that's based on an APR bonus, and it's also based on the balance, which is right across here. The balance is based upon a number of different things that have been added up, so you have got lots and lots of inputs that are involved there. Whereas if we have a look at something a little bit simpler, such as the APR bonus, we can see that this is based on 2 things: whether this is on time payments, and the APR on the APR calculator. Now we could put all of these inputs in, but it's quite acceptable to say that this is the value that will be used as the input to that test. So what we're expecting, what we are testing first of all, is our bonus percent. And on which worksheet is it? It's on the ownership model worksheet. What's our input data going to be? There's going to be 2. Okay, so it's on ownership model worksheet equals yes, and the APR on the APR calculator worksheet equals 24.3. So if that's 24.3, we would expect this, I'm just going to copy and paste that, to be equal to 22.3 if that is also equal to yes. Now in terms of different formulae and different functions, we can't now go and test this again using no. Although I agree it would be a very sensible test, I also agree with what OCR are trying to do in that they're looking for you to show that you need to do different tests, because they're only asking for 3. They want to see that you can do different types of tests. So we don't want to have the same types of function and the same types of formulae. So if we've already done a multiplication, let's not do another multiplication. If we've already done an if statement, let's not do another if statement. So let's look for something that bit different. So this time we're going to go for APR rate on the APR calculator. So I'm going to say here the APR 8% on APR data worksheet. We'll copy and paste that again over here. Now we've got to think, what are our inputs? We're going to have several inputs now, they're all on this worksheet here. We don't need to put the table in as our input. So we're going to put here APR calculator worksheet colon, because all of that stuff to that worksheet. So I'm going to say employment status equals casual, credit rating equals 4.6, driving license equals full, guarantor equals no, date of birth equals 15th of the 3rd 2000, no we can't have that, 1994. So we now need to think about what is this going to give us. So if we have a look, employment statement is casual, so what would our expected result be? So if we go to our ownership model now, if our employment status, so we want the APR table, if our employment status was casual, then we're on a risky. But we've got a full driving license, so we're in this column here. It now doesn't matter whether we've got a guarantor or a credit rating, because we're definitely in this column. We now need to look at the age. Well, we're in 2014, and it's the 14th of August when I'm recording this. So 14 years to 2014, plus another 5 years, and that is before August, so plus another 6 years. So that makes the person 20 years old. So if they're 20 years old, they're going to be in this column, and we would therefore expect the response to be refuse. Now we don't have to run the test, but it's a good idea to run it, because you can then check that your test plan is likely to be accurate. But the idea is that somebody else would run this test for you. So we're going to change that to be 4.6. This was going to be full. We were going to have enough was going to be 15th of the 3rd 94. There we go, it's come up as refused. So when we run that test, it has actually worked. But notice we did all our calculations manually in order to find that out. Okay, so that is your test plan complete. To be aware of is if you say test, of course, now because that says refuse, it's messed up all of our figures down here. If you were to say test this one, C15 plus 1, that's fine to test that, but you can't then test all of these down here because they're replicated of the same type of formula. So that is task 2 completed. Well done if you've got this far.